Outside Nigeria now, the war in Ukraine, where in an effort to secure a ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war, 4 major European leaders are holding talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky. The peace initiative comes just a day after Russia held its annual Second World War victory parade in Moscow. We have details in this report.
Under pressure, I would say. Right.
The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, the new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, are holding talks in Kyiv with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on strategies to end Russia's invasion of his country. Russia has already indicated it will not at all consider America's proposed 30-day ceasefire unless the West holds arms supplies to Ukraine. But the opposition is happening with renewed pledges of military hardware and ammunition coming from European nations. Ukraine is strongly of the view that only hard pressure on Russia will help put an end to the war, especially with President Trump giving far-reaching sanctions that will weaken the arm of the Russian military. President Zelensky will use today's leaders' visit to ask Germany's newly elected Chancellor Merz to speed up the delivery of long-range Taurus cruise missiles to his country. Ukraine says it needs such weapons to be able to hit the bases across the border from where Russia launches its daily attacks. Germany's Chancellor says he will keep increasing pressure on Russia's war machine for Russia to agree to a permanent ceasefire. On the flip side, the Kremlin press secretary Dmitry Peskov says Ukraine's allies must stop sending weapons to Ukraine before any ceasefire can happen.
And as the Victory Day ceasefire declared by Russia's President Vladimir Putin enters its third and final day, more Russian attacks have been reported in Ukraine. In the northern Sumy region, an 85-year-old woman was killed with 3 others injured. Ukrainian police say 19 residential homes and 10 other buildings were destroyed or damaged. In Korsistaynivka, eastern Donetsk region, 1 person was injured and 2 apartment blocks caught fire after Russian attacks. Ukrainian State Emergency Service says the rescuers who arrived at the scene were targeted by repeat double-tap strikes. Let's have a deeper look now into the lingering war between Russia and Ukraine. This amidst diplomatic efforts to bring it to an end. We bring in now to talk about this global affairs analyst Kashon Ononuju, and he joins us from Abuja. Thank you very much for joining us at this time. What are you seeing in terms of an anticipated end to the war between Russia and Ukraine, especially following this visit by key European leaders to Ukraine earlier today?
Oh, yes, the European leaders should simply be saying as making a wish public. That's all. That's what it should be, purely a wish. There's no policy statement. Policy statements are arrived at when the parties to the conflict are involved in such suppositions. Simply waking up and then wishing that Russia should go on a ceasefire without negotiations. It's not going to happen. Of course, you know, Russia believes, what are you doing ceasefire for? Why do we just need a 30-day ceasefire so that you can now start negotiating? No. Russia prefers to put the pressure through what it is currently doing, bombarding Kyiv, showing strength as far as Odessa, trying to show that all other places, including Kyiv and that are vulnerable under its capabilities. And that's what it's doing. Not listening to European rhetorics about a need for them to pause all actions. Then, in the midst of the pause, you start to negotiate. No. I don't think that's the right way to go for anybody who right now feel as advantaged as Russia is currently. They will not give up the current advantage. They will instead pile more pressure to force Ukraine to concede to certain things before a ceasefire is pronounced. I will advise that the suggestion by the Europeans should not be taken seriously. It is mere wishful thinking. The Russians will not respect it. Russians will only agree to a ceasefire if there are terms attached to such agreements. Without terms, they will not agree to ceasefire. Simply having a ceasefire because some European leaders went for photo opportunity in Ukraine and then they have voiced a need for Russia to agree to 30-day ceasefire will not bring about a ceasefire. What will bring a ceasefire is getting Ukraine to make concessions to which Russia may simply be agreeable to. That's what brings a ceasefire.
Right. And with the Trump presidency in the mix, and now, as it seems, finally speaking the same language as the rest of the Western world, at least those in support of Ukraine, do you see Russia balking, or do you still stick to your earlier analysis?
Oh, well, I still think Russia understands this. You don't tell a man who is engaged in a fight to stop fighting so you can then sit down to start negotiating some terms for them to stop fighting. You need to negotiate the terms for him to stop fighting so that he would then listen to you and then agree to stop fighting based on the terms that you have pronounced to him. But not that he stops fighting so that the person that you are a little bit sympathetic towards could then gain some advantage and sit properly before you can talk. No. That it doesn't work that way. That's a totally opposite of the way this game is. Russians believe right now that they do have an unsellable advantage, and all they need to do is simply to pile in more pressure by doing more of the things that they're doing that's bringing Europeans and Ukrainians to beg. And then they could then have their way. But they will not listen to simply rhetorics for ceasefire without agreeing to terms that will force Russia to agree that recently gained positions would not simply be overrun when they tally. I don't see Russia listening to what the Europeans are saying. The Europeans right way. Don't forget, we're also talking about how much will Europe, as they call themselves, the group of the willing, be willing to bring the muscles in to actually maintain a ceasefire. It's one thing to ask for a ceasefire, but what about who will maintain it? Europe doesn't seem capable of bringing in what is needed to maintain a ceasefire the way the United States can do it. And so far, the U.S. is simply going along with a need for ceasefire, a need for peace, but not that it understands what most of these people are talking about. Yes, the minerals agreement was signed and was given. Well, that gives you, say, listen, whatever it is, this portion of land here with some mineral rights in it and some advantages, they belong to you by virtue of this agreement. It doesn't make Ukraine U.S. territory. So we should understand the limits of the signing of mineral deals and what they do bring in actually forcing peace in the Ukraine. It's a mistake by NATO. NATO has to find a way to get Ukraine to agree to a lot of Russian demands if they seek to see Russia capitulate into agreeing for a ceasefire. If not, I think we'll have more of the same going forward.
Right. And another leg to my earlier question would be whether the U.S. will swing behind Ukraine using strategies such as making them buy arms from the U.S. government and not necessarily like a free deal like that, whether that will also form some kind of pressure on Moscow. What do you think?
Well, I don't think anything you give to Ukraine would put pressure on Moscow, because Moscow has had the opportunity to test its new weapons. It has also had the opportunity to employ some real tangible bragging rights because of tested weapons and the efficacy. So yes, that's it. There's nothing new that US or anybody will give to Ukraine that will change the trajectory of the war. The NATO people have lost the war. It's a mistake they went into it in the very first place. Getting Russia to agree to stop pounding Ukraine would probably also see them do more than they're currently doing. I do not think the current razzle rabbling that we have seen will bring any peace to Ukraine any soon. I believe they need to listen well to what the Russians are demanding. If those guarantees are in place for Russia, Russia could agree. We're talking
All
about
right.
a tangible peace, not the peace you mentioned now, and tomorrow evening it is broken because it's not real.
All right. Catch on Onuju. We thank you very much for your contributions on The World Now.
Thank you very much for having me.